beginning of my speech. We don't care what you call it, right? What you were saying is that it's unfair if shareholders stay there and continue to dictate policy. And we agree. And that's why I said in my speech that we were going to cancel existing shares and the government was going to run it through government vehicles like, for example, the Abu Dhabi Investment Group, something they never dealt with. But really what we wanted to talk about today was the effect on people, the harms to people themselves. I talked to you and I gave to you analysis into why, not just in the short term jobs are going to be lost, guys, but in the long term you cause irreparable damage to workforces where social problems are endemic, and these kind of things were never responded to by the proposition. They were simply dropped. We talked to you about a vital social interest, where that's the case. In some of these cases, they had two different responses. Some of them, they supported nationalisation, which I've dealt with, and in other ones, they just said, oh, well, it's not economically viable, so we just shouldn't do it. Like, we just don't accept that that's the case. They never said why this principle of the free market and being economically viable is worth destroying the livelihoods of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. And we showed you why it's so important that a government has a duty to protect these people using taxpayers' money, ladies and gentlemen. The proposition have failed to prove to you today that we shouldn't bail out companies in a significant majority of cases. And that's why we have won today's debate. Thank you very much.
And to present the proposition reply speech, Iqbal Kasam.
Team England today began this debate by setting themselves the burden that they had to show that bailouts are good because they always preserve jobs. They never told us how many or how well it works in the long term, just that we have to preserve jobs. As we went down the line, Team England moved steadily farther and farther and farther away from this premise, and ended by saying that we need to protect essential services. So the question of this debate then became, how do you best protect essential services? Unfortunately for Team England, they completely failed to understand Team Canada's case. What we told you is that we're completely okay with companies who provide services that can be filled by other companies failing. What Team England tried to do is to tell us that nationalisation and bailouts are the same thing. We think Team England should have Googled bailouts before they walked in the doors today. There's one reason of bailout. And it's really a shame that this is a question, because I thought I dealt with it pretty well at the beginning. What we told you is that a bailout is a mechanism that preserves the essential private structure of a company, that gives it another shot, even if it puts some regulations on the company. We think that no bailout in the past has ever completely put a company into public hands. So now that we've cleared up what a bailout is, do they work? This is the second question. What we told you is that they don't work because they preserve the existing private infrastructure that got the company into trouble in the first place. Team England said, no, we're going to let companies take over, and that's not a bailout. And we simply think, ladies and gentlemen, that when we proved them wrong on this, they had no response. We showed you that bailouts don't work because they remove a deterrent for a company to take excessive risk. Team England's response was, no, they don't, because they don't preserve the people at the top. Unfortunately for Team England, they don't know who's at the top. The people at the top aren't the shareholders and aren't CEOs and upper management. They are the shareholders, ladies and gentlemen, the people that Team England would keep in power. That was something they didn't respond to. They told us that bailouts prevent job loss, which is better for the economy as a whole. What we showed you is that that's not true if the jobs aren't actually doing anything productive. They told us today, point blank, that they would preserve the buggy manufacturers after cars were invented, ladies and gentlemen. We say that's a terrible use of taxpayer money, and that pours money into something that is completely unprofitable and uses money that should be better spent. We showed you that the bailout that was given to GM costed $700,000 per job that it preserved, ladies and gentlemen, something Team England never responded to. We showed you that nationalization would only be used in a small minority of cases where the service needed to be preserved, not jobs. That's the distinction between our two cases. So finally, are bailouts the best tool? Now this was the burden that Team England really had to prove today. Now what we would say is that even if we operate from England's definition of bailouts, which according to them is nationalization, we think that because of the fact that it still doesn't completely remove the shareholders, we think that that's a problem. And we think that nationalization is different because it works in liquidity crises, ladies and gentlemen. It guarantees liquidity in the market. It guarantees that you don't spiral into a Great Depression. Something private structures simply don't. Something Team England never responded to. They told us that nationalization is the same because it also takes taxpayers' money. What we showed you is that it gives taxpayers something in return apart from just an IOU card, ladies and gentlemen. It gives them assets. It gives them a service. Team England said that letting jobs go was bad economics. What we showed you is that no, it's not. Short-term unemployment is a common part of any economic cycle. We gave you the example of South Korea in 1966 and 74, something they didn't respond to. What we told you is that if you restructure a company but don't let people get laid off, you can't make a company profitable again. Something, again, Team England